work right down the line.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. And I intervene here only because I want to respond to my friend from North Carolina, who I think starts with the incontrovertible point that it's wrong to prejudge whether this was murder. Then it is equally wrong to prejudge that it's self-defense. And I hope that that my colleague, with his astute prosecutorial understanding, would just as much reprove the Attorney General and the President for going out and claiming this was self-defense without a complete investigation, especially when all the evidence of our senses would suggest if we're going to jump to a conclusion, we should jump to a conclusion that this was murder and not self-defense. But that's why we have the law. That's why we have a legal process. Now, the gentleman correctly states the situation, except he aborts the analysis midway. He says, well, she was told to stop, she was told not to go anywhere, but still she drove her car away. And I certainly saw that. The Supreme Court has a decision just on this point, which I'm sure the gentleman knows. It was decided in 1985. Everybody in criminal procedure learns it. Tennessee versus Garner, 1985, because Tennessee had a statute which said if there is someone fleeing the police, they can be shot. And the Supreme Court said that's not the rule. They can only be shot if they're fleeing the police if the police have probable cause to believe that the suspect poses a significant threat of death or danger to other people. Now, Ms. Good, who's a 37-year-old mom of a 6-year-old boy, now orphaned by ICE, posed no threat to anybody. At least, as far as we can tell, there's no suggestion that she posed a reasonable threat to anybody. That's the legal question. Now, I think our committee should launch an investigation into this. This would be a worthwhile subject for us to get into at this point. But the idea that simply because she disobeyed an order that she can be shot in the face at point blank is wrong. That's not the law in the United States of America. And you know who knows that? Everybody on this side of the aisle who talks about Ashley Babbitt. Because everybody talking about Ashley Babbitt seems to think that, well, she was told repeatedly to turn around and to leave, and then she still tried to use violence to get into our chamber, into the speaker's lobby, in order to get at us. And she was shot and repelled. And there were 2 different investigations which found that that was reasonable force used by the police because she was coming at them. But what we had in this case was this woman was trying to leave. She was trying to get away from it. She wasn't coming at the police. She was trying to get away from the police. So to the extent that we want to engage in an immediate post-mortem analysis, and I agree with the gentleman that this is why we have law. This is why we have a real legal investigation, and it is completely irresponsible for the president and the attorney general to be out there claiming against all evidence that this was self-defense. This is why we have law. Okay, then we should wait until we can make a final pronouncement upon that. But let's at least get down what the law is. This is the House Judiciary Committee. And people cannot be shot in the face simply because they walk away from a police officer. And especially when we've got police officers who are masked. And I just want to finish on this point, and I'm happy to yield to my friend. Because look, all of us represent jurisdictions. We've got local police, we've got county police, we've got state police. None of them are masked. We've got the Army, we've got the Navy, we've got the Marines. None of them are masked. We've got the National Guard. None of them are masked. Why is ICE masked? This is what we want to know. Nobody's given us a good answer for this. Now, one suggestion comes from the fact that we have multiple January 6th defendants who are working at the Department of Justice itself, including Ed Martin and Jared Wise. So if they're hiring them at the Department of Justice, presumably they're hiring them at the Homeland Security and ICE, and maybe they don't want them to be identified because, of course, those people were very well video documented on the day of January 6th. There's a lot of suspicion that that's why these people are being masked, and they're not even telling us why they're being masked. But It's precisely this episode which demonstrates why people are afraid of ICE and will try to move away from ICE rather than submit to their order, even when people need to submit to a lawful order of the police. Happy to yield to the gentleman.
Well, and just in terms of the masks, I think it goes without saying that there is an element of undue danger when you deal with international criminals. But in regards to the facts of this case, is it not relevant the angle from the officer's perspective? The only angles I've seen have been from hindsight, where the officer was who pulled the trigger, and I'll stipulate it was a tragedy. Is it relevant to see what he saw? He couldn't see that the wheels were turning, if they were. He couldn't see what where the trajectory was. He was right in front of the car that accelerated his direction. Is that not a relevant consideration to the ranking member?
Well, of course it's a relevant consideration. Yeah, I mean, if it comes down to a legal question, all of that is completely relevant. But what the administration is saying cuts completely against what we're able to see with our own eyes. Thanks.
The time of the gentleman's expired. The gentleman